Welcome back to the definitive Metroidvania tier list. This is episode 3, brought to you by me, the Metroidvania Guru. I typically do 10 Metroidvanias per episode, but I'm actually going to go down to 5 because there's just a lot to say about every entry, and I really want to give each entry the time necessary for me to justify where I'm placing it on the tier list. So again, going from 10 to 5. And each selection, like always, is randomly picked by a picker that I created. So the ones we picked today, no different. So I'm just going to stop rambling. We're going to jump right on in. Let's go. First up, we have Convergence, a League of Legends story. I actually did an episode on this. If you're interested, I'll put a link up in the card, up in the top right or wherever it goes. I actually ended up really liking this game. It was interesting, and what's really cool about it is that I've never actually played any League of Legends in my life, but I heard this was a Metroidvania, so I was going to give it a shot, and so I did, and like I said, I ended up liking it. What I do typically is I just have some bullet points, pros and cons. We're going to stick with our pros first, and then move on to our cons. So the first pro we'll have on here is the fact that I've never played League of Legends, and I did like it. So we covered that. Let's move on. Next is the platforming is actually fun in this game. I had a blast with it. It's pretty cool. Again, I don't know anything about League of Legends, so I can only assume that they were very close to the source material with his abilities. But yeah, platforming ended up being pretty fun. You can grind rails, you can run up walls, you can flip around poles and launch yourself. It's all really cool, and it all links together really well, very naturally. There's these really cool kind of like platforming challenges that you can do to gather artifacts, and you got to chase this little like robot thing around. Those were always a whole lot of fun, very time-based, and again, just the platforming just kind of like was very smooth and natural, so I really liked it. Next bullet point I have here is combat. I really liked the combat in this game. It was really interesting, especially because of the time powers. They were very fun. I was terrible at using it because you could like hold a button to rewind time, and you could do it for so long. You could increase however that length was through like some power-ups in the game or whatnot. But regardless, I was just terrible at it. You have like so many times you can use it, and I would always like rewind just before I was going to get hit again. So again, that's my fault. But I was terrible with the time powers. But they were a heck of a lot of fun to use. And they give you a lot of opportunities to use it because there's all kinds of crap on the screen. And it's so empowering and really, really fun to figure out how to get yourself out of a stupid situation that you put yourself in. So that was just a blast. These time powers led to some really cool boss fights. In fact, I would say the boss fights were a highlight. Not all of them were fantastic, especially because later on you get some move where I don't even remember what it's called, but you essentially just like explode. You just like kind of like imagine like Dragon Ball Z, you charge up and that key that they charge up just like blasts people away, and you just kind of do that to the final boss. Not just the final boss, but most of the later game bosses, because it's a move you get pretty later on, and it just breaks the game. So, but before you get that move, the boss fights are really cool. I remember one of the bosses, and I don't play League of Legends, but apparently this guy is one of the champions. He's a werewolf, can't remember his name, but that fight was really cool because it would like you throw like walls at you, and you have to like figure out how to like teleport through them. And that was, I don't know, I thought that was really cool. But yeah, I would get lost in the action sometimes, especially because you have like an after image of yourself following you. That after image indicated that you could do like some special move that was almost like a screen clearing move, or at least if you were close to the after image, it would mess you up. It was really powerful and it was great, but I don't know, my brain just couldn't work it out, man, because that after image, I for some reason would think that's me, and so when I'm rewinding time, it would just mess with me. So next bullet point I have here is that it has amazing production values, and I wouldn't see why you wouldn't think that. League of Legends is huge, and of course, when they make a Metroidvania, they're going to go all out. So you got voice acting, you got great animation, you got really good gameplay, voice acting spot on, just wonderful production values here. Next, I got narrative is good, and then I put future echo versus present echo. I did like the narrative in this game. I thought it was almost Saturday morning cartoonish, really. But I'm not dragging it or anything. I'm just saying it was meant for a younger crowd, and I think they would enjoy it because some of the bad guys in it were just like over-the-top villainy. But then there was Future Echo, who was actually pretty nuanced. I'm not going to spoil anything for it, but he does end up being a quote-unquote villain, but really not really. He's actually like an anti-hero, but it's the way they worked with that into the narrative was pretty good, considering how Saturday morning cartoonish it all ends up actually feeling. But yeah, for some reason, Future Echo, they just nailed. The last bullet point I have here for pros, we got quality of life. When you go into a bio that you've already completed, you can exit it at any time via the pause menu. And I know that sounds like stupid or not that big of a deal, I suppose, but I love things like that, where it's like, hey, I missed something in this biome, I just want to run and grab it real quick. And this game is very platform heavy, and so you got to like redo platforming sections, and that's kind of a hassle. And so it's nice to be able to like get the thing and then just quit out of the biome. So I just, I got to give it props for that. Moving on to the cons, it's not very Metroidvania. It's very linear. There was a point when I was unknowingly going to sequence break, where I was going to a biome I shouldn't go to yet. But there was this gate that was there blocking me, and there's no way to open it. So I was like struggling, like, why can't I open this gate? Is there a switch nearby, or whatever? Turns out I just wasn't supposed to be there yet. And once I progressed the story far enough, it just inexplicably removed itself. So that was kind of frustrating, kind of dumb, but it is what it is. Next up, we have exploration versus observation. And so exploration within Convergence is pretty good. It's fine. It's not great. You will be rewarded if you go off the beaten path, but that's exactly what it is. It's just you're going off the beaten path. So if you have very strong observation skills, I would imagine every single one of you does, because you're a Metroidvania player. If your observation skills are keen, you can clear out a biome first try. Not that big of a deal. There's no need really to revisit any biomes once you've gotten everything in it, and it'll tell you on the map, your percentage of what you have there. So it's that's pretty convenient. But yeah, backtracking in the game is really kind of not there, and I'm not going to argue. Backtracking is probably one of my, I wouldn't say least favorite things in a Metroidvania, but it's definitely one that has some nuance, and if you nail it, great. If not, you're going to really hurt your Metroidvania. Not a whole lot of backtracking here. Take that for what it is. Oh god. Okay, so I talked about the narrative and how much I liked it, but there is a part in this game that just drags, and it's just terrible. And it's the part with Jinx. And again, I don't play League of Legends, but apparently she's one of the most popular champions in the franchise. So it seems like they just kind of shoehorned her in here, and it feels shoehorned. It's awful. I don't want to like spoil the story or anything, but essentially the story is coming to a head. You're close to the climax, and then this part happens with Jinx, and it just brings everything to a crawl, and it makes no sense. And you're like, why is this happening? Why do I care about this? None of this makes sense. In the end, it ends up making sense. Jinx reveals something, and you're like, oh, that's why this is happening. But for a good hour and a half of the game, you're like, what in the crap is going on? I would say just because they do justify this part in the end, I think they could have done it better, because again, you got an hour and a half of just being like, why? So I don't know. I just felt like that Jinx part was this could have been dealt better, I suppose, or whatnot. So, and I guess the last part I have for the cons here is that the ending is kind of a cop-out. It could have been left ambiguous, and again, I'm not going to spoil anything, but something happens. Could have been left ambiguous, but then everything turns out to be fine in a post-credit scene. And the fact that the game only has one ending, that kind of just like, for a Metroidvania, that's just wasted potential, right? Because I could have gotten this ending that was ambiguous or quote-unquote bad, and then did something within the game to prevent that or to have a better outcome, and then I would have earned that post-credit scene, and then I would have been okay, right? But the fact that there was this one ending and it was like ambiguous and then turns out being fine, I just felt like I didn't earn that, and maybe I'm not supposed to earn it, but I feel like in a Metroidvania, you should earn that best or true ending, right? So I just think that was just some wasted potential there. All that being said, where would I place Convergence on a tier list? So I would say it's going to be C at tops. And I don't know if I'd put it over Messenger. I definitely would put it over Fist. So, yes, there you go. So we're looking at a mid C, like right in the middle, right there. It's a good game. It's not the greatest game you'll ever play, but you'll have fun with it. So there you go. Next up is Blasphemous. You know, it's funny because I almost didn't do this. All the games that are picked, again, are picked randomly. And the fact that I have a Blasphemous video coming up this Friday, I almost was like, nope, I can't do this. But it's like, you know what? Whatever. It's going to be on the list eventually anyway. And, you know, whatever the picker says goes. And that's kind of the conceit of this series. So I was like, you know what? I'll just talk about it. I'll try to be vague-ish because I don't want to like say everything I'm going to say in my video coming this Friday. But yeah, so let's get moving. So Blasphemous, you know, first and foremost, it is a great game. It is fantastic, and I don't think any Metroidvania fan will say otherwise. So getting right into the pros and the cons of it, let's talk about the pros. First off is combat. I really like the combat in Blasphemous. It's methodical. It's got risk-reward. It's visceral. It feels good. I like it a whole lot. Next, the boss fights. So we're talking about combat. The boss fights in Blasphemous are a definite highlight. They are ugly. They are big. They are, you know, a good challenge. They are just arresting. They are absolutely fantastic. And I love fighting every boss in this game, especially the Amenacitas. With the new game plus, those are really cool. But yeah, boss fights in Blasphemous are just fantastic. Exploration is my next pro, and I'm not. Gosh, I don't want to get too into the weeds into everything because I got that video coming out this Friday. But exploration in Blasphemous might be one of the best in Metroidvanias, right? I mean, there's a few that are just up there. They are just elite, and Blasphemous is one of them. And it has to do with the ability gating in the game, in that the penitent one doesn't really get abilities per se. He gets like relics that are blessed by the miracle, right? And they don't power him up, they alter the world that he's in, which is very different than other abilities in other Metroidvanias. And what's really cool about this is that there is an entire hidden layer to Blasphemous that you'll never see unless you find these abilities. And every single one of these abilities is hidden, right? You either have to buy something, do some backtracking, or you got to complete some side quest, or you find things and hidden stuff. So it's a secrets upon secrets upon secrets, and it really, really rewards you in your exploration. So to find these abilities that you don't even need to find, you can finish Blasphemous. You can take its critical path and complete the game with the worst ending. You can definitely do that. You don't need to get these abilities unless you really want to get the best ending, or a better ending, at least than the crappy one where he goes into the ash, right? So that's really cool that exploration is so rewarded. And so I'll just leave it at that, but I just thought that was great. My next bullet is atmosphere and narrative. Gosh, just this game, I'm trying not to gush all about it, but like, its atmosphere is almost untouched, right? Like in the Metroidvania genre, I would say it is untouched. You know, there are some games out there like Bloodborne and things like that are as good or better than Blasphemous, you know, depending on how you want to take it. But man, I love the atmosphere in Blasphemous. It's so ugly. It is just so, it's so oppressive, and it just nails everything that it tries to do. And one of the things I say in my upcoming video is that the atmosphere is so effective because everything in Blasphemous is influenced by real-world Spanish works and locations, right? So it's really easy for us to connect with what's going on in Blasphemous, even though it's exaggerated and just twisted, right? But we still can somehow connect with it. So all of that just makes something just fantastic. The narrative is great. It's very From Software-esque, right? Where it's not spoon-fed to you, so you're going to have to search for it. But when you find it, man, it hooks you. Because the miracle and everything that it does, and you learn about the high wills and everything, it's going to hook you. It's going to keep your imagination captive, and you're going to want to do the assigned reading that's given to you. And all these item descriptions. My next bullet point I have is just lots of content. There's a new game plus. I mentioned the Amenicitas. There's a boss rush, all kinds of stuff. A lot of it was given later because this is a Kickstarter game, and we'll talk about that here in a sec. But yeah, lots of content in the game if you're into that. God, that new game plus is really cool though. And then the path to the true ending is just amazing. I go into depth on this aspect in the video coming out this Friday, but really it's just like there's so many Metroidvanias that have a true path to a true ending, and they're borderline nonsensical. And I give examples in my video. But Blasphemous is not nonsense. It is so logical, and it uses this creative logic to hook you and to really build upon itself to create this climax that's just freaking fantastic. So that it might be one of the best in all of Metroidvanias. You know, I really like Hollow Knights, but I really think Blasphemous, getting to its true path, is even better than Hollow Knight, personally. So, moving on to cons, I have it wasn't complete out the gate, and this is typical for Kickstarters. And so it's tough to say this is a con more than a critique, you know. But it is what it is, right? It was a Kickstarter game. They released it, and then they started adding more stuff later on. I personally find that frustrating, but I'm glad with the overall product that we finally got. So I'm not gonna harp on it too much. But I remember the game starting out with really bad voice acting. I wish there was more stuff on YouTube that showcased the bad voice acting, but it was really the English, at least. I'm sorry, the English voice acting was so bad. But then they nailed it in a patch, and it just sounds so much better. But then there was also the biome called the Sleeping Canvases, or the Sleeping Canvas, or whatever it's called. There's this one part with the guillotines, and it knocks you into the spikes, and it's pretty unforgiving. And so they made it a little bit more forgiving by adding these wooden platforms. It looks really janky and stupid. Next up I have in my cons is the second half of the game is drastically different, right? I defend it in my upcoming video because I actually don't mind this drastic change in, I don't know if tone's the word, but just I felt more immersed in the first half of the game when I was getting the 3 humiliations, and I felt less immersed when I got into the Mother of Mothers. I don't know. I guess it has to do with just the openness, and then as soon as you get into the Mother of Mothers, the game gets very constricted, right? Although there are a lot of diversions that will give you the illusion of nonlinearity, but it's a very linear part when you get inside the Mother of Mothers, and it wasn't as immersive to me. You know, that's more of a critique than a con, because overall it's, I loved that part, and I loved that entire game. My last con here is the addition of Miriam. Gosh, I absolutely hated that they put Miriam in this game. It completely shattered the verisimilitude. And I hated her stupid time trials. I just thought they were so dumb. There's you're supposed to be going super fast, and there's a whole lot of waiting on elevator thingies or moving platforms or whatnot. I just thought it was stupid. Just not my favorite thing that they added. But you can ignore it if you want. So I guess I can't be too mad. Where would I rank Blasphemous on this list? This is the scary part, because I don't know. I'm coming in here now, and I'm trying to figure out where I would put it. It's going S, no doubt. But where? Before or after Ender Lilies? I'm seriously deliberating. Sorry for the dead air, but oh man, this is rough. I'm going to put it before. Even though Ender Lilies might be my favorite Metroidvania of all time, Blasphemous is just so freaking good. So there we go. Even though Ender Lilies is my favorite, it is tough to objectively say that Blasphemous is not better. So there, now we got our second S tier. Fantastic. Next up we have Greak. I think it's pronounced Greek. I don't know. Greak Memories of Azure. I do not like this game. I wanted to like this game. I do not like it. I don't really know how to say it other than that. It's just not a good game. We'll talk about it, but let's start with the pros. I love the art style. It's hand-drawn. The animation's great. I like the design that they go with. It's adorable, but then there's some messed up stuff going on, so it just kind of that clashing of tone versus style is always really cool. Combat was kind of interesting and definitely had potential. I guess I'll dive into more of that when it comes to the cons, but I liked the idea of having to control 2 characters at once. Eventually you get a 3rd character, but like majority of the game, you're I don't know, Adara and Greak, and I can't remember the brother's name, but like the younger brother, the main character, I suppose, at least the one you start with, is named Greak. Greak and Adara are kind of cool. Greak is like the warrior class, or I don't know, the melee fighter, while Adara shoots magic and stuff. And it's kind of cool to control both at the same time and have them attack and stuff like that. But I don't know, it didn't really hit where I wanted it, especially when the 3rd character is added. That's why I said that it has potential. But it is kind of interesting, and I'll just leave it at that. It's kind of interesting, but it had potential. I found, this is my last bullet point for the pros, but I found the narrative to be interesting. Like, basically, like, you're Greek, and you have 2 siblings, Adara and Rydell, I don't remember the dude's name. And you guys get separated because there's this war going on. There's these enemies, I don't remember exactly what they were, but they're like these enemies, and they are using these creatures to infect the land, right? And so, I don't know if it's like a warring tribe or something. I can't exactly remember everything from the lore, but I remember actually kind of liking it as I played the game. And so, yeah, it's about a brother trying to find his sister and then find his other brother so that they can escape onto this flying ship to this promised land, right? So, yeah, I mean, I thought that was kind of cool. I like the fact that Adara, which was like the little sister, was like an apprentice magician, and could like leave these signs for her brother to follow. Yeah, it was pretty interesting. Like the setup and everything was good. And again, there was a lot of lore in the game. And I was interested in it, in like the heroes or the champions or whatever they were called, and like the past and stuff like that, but it never really comes to fruition. And so, like, at least in a meaningful way. And that brings me to our cons, because I said I didn't really like this game, so I don't really have a whole lot of great stuff to say about it, unfortunately. So my first con is going back to the narrative. I felt the ending wasn't very impactful, and it's tough to explain why unless you actually play through the game. Like, I'm big into storytelling. I'm a writer myself, and I teach English at the college level. And when it comes to like storytelling, you know, you have your conflicts, right? And you got your act 1, you got your act 2, you got your act 3. That's a pretty basic story structure. Playing through Greak, I felt like the ending of this game was really just the end of act 1. Like, there was so much more it could have delved into to make this a really memorable and cool narrative. And I am going to spoil it just a little bit, so sorry about that. But like, I guess it's not spoiling too much. But at the end of the game, you fix your ship and you fly up into the sky and you reach the promised land, or you're implied to reach the promised land or something like that. That felt like the end of Act 1 to me. And again, it's tough to explain because you'd have to actually play through the game and see where the conflict is going and the ebb and flow of that narrative. But it felt like once they land, something more should happen. It shouldn't just end. Now, this was an indie studio that made this game, and they probably had time constraints or budgeting and things like that. So this is I would guarantee if this studio had the time and the money, this would have been a bigger game, and I guarantee they would have landed on the promised land, and they would have been like shocked to find that it was also infected, or that the government / rulers of that floating island, they were like corrupt themselves and was maybe working with the enemies or doing something. But yeah, it felt like there should have been more to this game, but they just didn't get to it. Either like one, they just really felt like the story was done, which I don't think is true, or two, because they didn't have like the time and resources, they couldn't continue that story. I don't know, it's just speculation at this point, but there's just something about the narrative where it just did not feel satisfactory in the end to me. Moving on to my next bullet point is, this is a puzzle platformer. I'm sorry, but if you're a puzzle platformer and a Metroidvania, you're already on my crap list, if you will. I don't feel like going through here and trying to find all the cuss words to censor them. But yeah, I absolutely hate puzzle platformers. I don't know what it is. I used to like them when I was younger, But nowadays, I take a look at puzzle platformers and I just kind of want to puke. It just, they don't do it for me anymore. And the thing about the puzzles in this game is, because I imagine this game was made for a younger audience. The puzzles are so simple. Like, soon as I get in there and I see the puzzle, I've already solved it in my head. Now I have to execute it. And executing these puzzles can be just tedious because you have to swap characters. And that brings me to my second, this will be my third bullet point for cons, is the character switching sucks. I hated it, especially when it comes to the platforming, the puzzle platforming aspects, because you would have to swap characters to solve a puzzle, push a block, press a button, lever, whatever. And then there were puzzles where you actually had to redo it all again because you had to get the second character over or the third character over as well. And I just felt really tedious. So I don't know, I really can't say a whole lot of great things about this game. I did not enjoy it. That being said, where would I put Greak? I'd put it in D, and I'd put it, there you go, right there, underneath this Harmony of Dissonance, which is an insult because I do not like Harmony of Dissonance, but I also do not like Greak. So if you like Greak, more power to you. I wish I liked it too. Next is Toki Tori, and for anyone who's ever played the game and you just listen to my rant on Greak, you know exactly the fate of this one too. But we'll get to it. Let's start with the pros on this one. It's got an adorable art style. The art looks really good. It's like a 2.5D game. Typically those look like crap. I hate 2.5D games unless they really nail it, and Toki Tori nails it. I think it just looks charming and looks absolutely great. I have no complaints on any of the visuals. My next thing, the puzzles are clever. They really are, especially because you only use two buttons. Like, you can stomp and you can whistle. And you can, like, when it comes to whistling, you can long whistle, you can short whistle, you can make tunes to do stuff. It's cool. And I will praise them in that they did a very great job at making these puzzles. Very clever. And the last pro I have here is that the narrative hooks you with some mystery. Like, I was actually really, really interested in what the heck was going on, because the game I never played Toki Tori 1. I saw some gameplay and you gotta like run around and save like the other birds that are trapped in eggs or something like that. But Toki Tori 2, it's kind of like just starts and you just go and you gotta pick things up from like environmental storytelling, like from other birds whistling or things in the background or something like that. Eventually some things start talking to you telepathically, and then you see like, this dark mist shooting up from the ground, and you get to like the town and you see this big crystal and all this crap, and you're like, what in the world is going on? This is actually really cool. I will say that a lot of it doesn't pay off in the end though. I wasn't like satisfied with anything at the end of the game. In fact, I was like very sour on the entire experience. So let's move on to the cons. The first bullet I have here in the cons is that this is a puzzle platformer. When it comes to Metroidvanias, obviously there's a lot of subjectivity, and maybe you like puzzle platformers, but I just cannot get into them. I hate them so much. And this one was a very clever puzzle platformer, but that doesn't work for me. I just don't like puzzle platformers. The next bullet point I have here is exploration was not rewarded. Absolutely not. This is a trophy hunter game where if you're like getting achievements or trophies or whatnot, that's your reward. Me, I'm not into that stuff. I like actual narrative rewards or items given to me and things like that. This game doesn't do that. You collect all the golden things that you find throughout the game, and then you put those golden things into like these stones, which then opens up a thing. It's all really cool, but then you get like these crappy wings that you can only do so much with. And I was so disappointed. I was like, oh, so now I can play this really stupid obstacle course, and then you can like visit something called the Dark Room, and then you can find a rose. And then like, I think you can also find like Dev Island or something like that. It's like really stupid crap that doesn't mean anything, but it's great if you're an achievement hunter or a trophy hunter. So I was very disappointed, and like, because some of these things were really hard to get, these like little gold things, and I just felt like I was not compensated for my time. So I was just like, oh, and I don't feel exploration was rewarded. My last one here, it says rewards sucked. What do I mean by that? Oh, I guess I kind of popped the cherry on that one already, where I was talking about finding the rose in the dark room. Yeah, there's nothing rewarding in this game to me. I mean, if you want to say the reward is the journey, then more power to you. But I wanted a little something more, and I think it just had to do with something with the fact that I was actually hooked by the mystery of the game, and it didn't all come together. And I get it, this game is aimed towards children, I would imagine, but some of these puzzles were tough, dude. So I guess if you're a younger gamer, this is going to be for you. And but for me, I was just like, I'm done with it. So if I have to put it on here, this is going to be Toki Tori is going to be a D, and I'm going to put it under Greak. Now, yes. Yep, put it under Greak, because at least Greak had combat. Toki Tori just kind of like whistle and stomp on stuff. So there you go. And last but not least, we have Castlevania Portrait of Ruin, the second game on the DS. They've released 3 EVERvanias on the DS. This was the second, yeah. And this one, it might have been my favorite on the DS, although all 3 are just fantastic. I don't know, just something about it. Well, I'll tell you exactly what it is. I love Metroidvanias where you control more than one character. I just think that's there's something there. So Metroidvanias are known to kind of create this isolationist feel, and I hate that feeling. And so anytime they undermine that, I'm in. I think I talked about it in my Moonscars review or something like that, but Castlevania Portrait of Ruin really does a good job. I think the first game that really did it for me, though, was Euphoria on the NES. I think you can control like 4 characters in that one that you can swap, but this one, Castlevania Portrait of Ruin, you get the 2 characters, and I can't remember their names. I think it's Jonathan and Charlotte, I think are their names. And yeah, I really liked the swapping in this game. That's actually my first pro. So there's like dual character system. They're pretty They're pretty diverse. Jonathan is your melee, and then Charlotte is your magic, and she has like 40 something spells. It's amazing. And John has the weapon killer. I'm sorry, the vampire killer, but it's like really weak, so he can't really use the whip. So he gets all kinds of different weapons like swords and all that. You played EVERvanias before, so he gets all that, which is great. But there's just all kinds of really cool stuff that you can do with this dual character system. There's like double team moves you can do. You can swap on the fly. You can have both characters out at the same time. You can make them run in and do an assist like it's Marvel vs. Capcom. There's double team moves, which is like the dual crushes, which takes a lot of MP, but they're super powerful. You can use them to solve a few puzzles, like you gotta like push some things. At one point you gotta like push a train, which is hilarious. And one of the things I really like is enemies react differently depending on the character you are. Like I remember there's this one enemy that if you're Jonathan, you walk up and he will stab you, but if you're Charlotte, he just tries to give you a rose. I just thought little things like that, it was funny. Let's see. Yeah, there's some ability gating when it comes to the dual characters too. Like you can like jump off of each other's head or something like that. But yeah, I thought that was really cool. Sub weapons in this game are equipable, which I don't even know if any other EVERvania does that, where you get like a sub weapon like the axes or the Bible or whatever. You usually have to pick them up and then use hearts or maybe MP to use them or something like that. In this game, sub-weapons are equipable and they can be leveled up. So the more you use them, the more they go. I remember you can get like a grenade, but then later on it becomes like a bigger grenade with a bigger explosion, and axes get bigger. It's really cool. So I really like that aspect of this Castlevania game. This game has quests. You talk to, I think his name is Wind, and then Wind will give you quests, and it's mostly just like killing stuff. Go to a place, kill a certain amount of things, come back to him, get rewarded. And you can get HP and MP ups, equipment, spells, and relics from him by doing those quests, and so I always thought that was kind of cool. The true path is pretty cool in this one too. You have to find the sanctuary spell, which is like not told to you. You just kind of find it, and it's just like random. You just find this place, you turn into a frog, and you end up finding it's really weird. And it's kind of cool because you have to use it against the sisters, the sanctuary spell, but it takes like forever to use it. And so Jonathan, and I really hope that's his name because I cannot remember this dude's name, but Jonathan has to protect her while she's charging up the spell. And that's really awesome. It cures their vampirism or whatever. And that's how you get to the path to the true ending where you fight Dracula and you beat Brawner or whatever the other vampire's name is. And it's kind of cool because they foreshadow this a little bit with like the shopkeeper where he gets bit by a vampire, and you can use the sanctuary spell to heal him if you want. So that's really kind of how they foreshadow it. It was really, really cool. I guess the only other thing I would say about the true path is When you fight Dracula, this is my favorite Dracula fight in the game, in any Castlevania. That might be a hot take, and I may be wrong on it, but I want to say I'm right. In that this is just the coolest Dracula fight, because you're fighting Dracula and Death together, and then they combine and make like this really cool looking Dracula vampire bat looking thing, and it's so awesome. And it does this move where it like puts its fingers on the screen and you gotta like smack his fingers away. It's really cool. Definitely my favorite Dracula fight. And my last pro is when you fully level up the vampire killer, you have to like fight Richter and you beat him with cream pies, which sounds anyway. Yeah, you get this sub weapon called cream pie, and for some reason it's so effective against Richter. I don't know, it's so stupid and I love it. It's so Iga. But yeah, I put that as a pro. I thought that was funny. Now we come to the cons. I would say this game has probably the worst biomes ever in Castlevania. Again, that's a hot take and I could be wrong, but I hated the biomes in this game. There's 9 of them, but only 8 of them are critical. And they're just duplicates. Like you do the first 4, and I can't remember all of them. Like there's like a medieval town, there's a desert, and then there's the circus. First off, circus, shut up with this crap. They have a freaking demon circus, all right? Like, that's stupid. I thought it would be cool, but it's not fun, and it sucks, and it's stupid. And whatever the 4th one is, I can't remember. So you got those 4, and then they duplicate them, right? And you got to do the stupid circus in the desert and stuff again. And it's janky. It is. Now I get that this game was like pushed out really fast, and had they not duplicated them, then we'd have a shorter game. You know, take that for what it is, if that's a good or a bad thing. But I absolutely hated that they repeated the biomes in this game, and then they had a stupid circus. Are you kidding me with this? Anyway, my next con is the art style. It's very anime-esque, and I cannot remember her name. But there's a particular artist, and you would know her, especially if you played Symphony of the Night, because she does a lot of their art, a lot of their key art, a lot of their designs and things like that. And it's very gothic. It's a very, very distinct style, and you see it throughout anything that Iga does with her. And I could be wrong. I know she was in Harmony of Dissonance, and then she was in of course Symphony. I don't think she did Circle of the Moon. I could be wrong. I'll let you guys correct me on that one. But anyway, she did do Aria of Sorrow. And then when the DS games came, they switched up the art style, and they didn't use her. And so Dawn of Sorrow, the first DS game, had this really weird generic looking anime style. And it was so jarring because you see her style, which is fantastic, in Aria of Sorrow. Then you take a look at Dawn, you're like, ugh, right? And then they continue to do this style in Portrait of Ruin. And I will say it's not as jarring in Portrait of Ruin because you only ever see them in this style. Like again, if you take a look at Soma, you saw it in her style in Aria, and then they switched it up in Dawn. You're like, ugh. So the fact that Jonathan and Charlotte and all of them are in Portrait are just in the anime style, this generic anime style. It doesn't seem as bad, but I just do not prefer it. I just thought it just looks really, really generic. And then my last con here is that there is no DS Castlevania collection yet, which angers me greatly. I would pay a whole lot of money for that. I know they just released the GBA collection, and I think Limited Run Games is doing a thing on it. You can get that physically, and you can play all 3 of those games on the GBA, plus Dracula X if you hate yourself. So I need them to make the DS one. So the fact that they do not have a DS collection yet is it's forcing me to put it in the F tier below Necrosphere. So obviously I'm joking. Necrosphere is garbage, and I would never do that to Castlevania, especially Portrait of Ruin, which is one that I really, really like. Where would I legit put it? I'm gonna drop it in B. I think it's gonna be B. I don't know if it's gonna be there though. Let's see. Man, I think I might put it here under Agelos, and above is that yeah, it's 7 Sirens. I think that's right. I think that's a good spot for it. Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. Oh, there you go. So Portrait of Ruin. It's a mid B. And there we have it. We have our next 5 placed into our definitive tier list. I hope you guys are liking this series. I'm going to keep going with it. If you agree with what I have here, I'd like to hear it in the comments. If you disagree with something, let me know. I could always be persuaded to move things if, there's something I'm neglecting, because there's just so many games on here. Yeah, I could be neglecting something. So yeah, as long as you're respectful, we can talk about it in the comments and see what we can do. But yeah, there you go. That's part 3 in the books. I'll see you in part 4 next month.